Hello class, my name is Shelby Pafford. Today I'm going to be talking to you about something that many of you are most likely very familiar with, and that is consumer fraud. As consumers, we're especially vulnerable to fraud, as we're going to learn in this chapter. I believe that this lecture and the following discussion we will have in the discussion board is going to be something many of us can relate to and share stories about, since we are consumers and everyone around us is consumers. So let's get started. Let's start by going over the learning objectives that I hope we accomplish during this lecture. First, we need to be able to define what consumer fraud is and understand how serious it is. Second, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about and understanding identity theft. Lastly, at the end of the lecture, we're going to classify the various types of investments and consumer frauds. So what is consumer fraud? Our textbook defines it as any fraud that targets individuals as victims. Examples of consumer fraud include telephone fraud, magazine fraud, sweepstakes fraud, for money offers like those Nigerian prince offers, counterfeit drug fraud, which I hope none of us are involved in, internet auctions, identity theft, which we're going to go into further detail about shortly, and bogus multi-level marketing schemes. You know, those are the things that your random aunt or weird high school friend are pushing on Facebook. So I want everybody to take a moment to think about a time that they or somebody else that they might have known have fallen victim to one of the above scenarios and get that story ready to share in our discussion board perhaps later. So this information I got from the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission website. This is from the 2017 Consumer Fraud Report, so this does not include all fraud because some of it wasn't reported to them. So as you can see, they said that they had 2.7 million complaints of consumer fraud in 2017. So if we're looking into the categories that they define that were their biggest places of fraud, debt collection takes number 1 and identity theft takes number 2, and imposter scams take number 3. Some information that I thought was pretty interesting from this report was that they said in the bottom left, as you can see, younger people reported losing money more often than older people, which is very surprising considering the younger generation is considered more tech savvy, so you think it would be the opposite. However, though, on the right, you can see that the median loss is much higher for the older generation than the younger generation. We're now going to move into identity theft, which is a very serious form of consumer fraud and can have very dire consequences in your life. So the book defines identity theft as circumstances when somebody uses another person's name, address, social security number, very scary one, their bank or credit card account information, or any other identifying information to commit fraud or other crimes. This is obviously incredibly serious. If they have access to your bank or credit card numbers, they could quickly drain your bank account or make fraudulent purchases in your name. Next, let's talk about the identity theft cycle. This graphic was provided to us from our book. So starting at stage 1, we have the discovery stage. This is when our perpetrator will gain access to our information initially. After gaining this information, they will begin to verify it. Moving on to stage 2, titled action, the perp will begin to accumulate documentation. They will then conceive their cover-up or concealment actions. Stage 3 is the trial. This is showcased in 3 different dimensional actions. I'm going to go through these dimensions in an example from my own life, when my debit card account information was stolen. In the first dimension, the action is small. It is used to test the information. For me, the person who took my account tested it at a Taco Bell with $20 worth of food. It went through, so they moved on to the second dimension, which is a larger theft, often involving a personal interaction without much chance of getting caught. They went to a resort. Unfortunately for them, I am a college student, and I didn't have money in my card to check into a resort, so they were caught. If they hadn't been, the third dimension is where their largest theft would have been committed. The perp will do this when they have the confidence that their scheme is working. Cybercrime goes hand in hand with consumer fraud, since many times our consumer information can be taken online. As we can see, Florida unfortunately made the top 3 states with number of cybercrime victims in 2017. The examples at the bottom highlight the different ways that we are exposed online to consumer fraud, including identity theft, phishing emails, It's easier to have your bank account information stolen, but luckily, banks have been able to make encryption keys. So every time you and your bank communicate online, there is a complex set of encryption keys that stop people from getting your information. Additionally, there's also theft of personal work that could be taken from your computer. So while technology has helped us, technology has also increased the different avenues for fraudsters to fraud consumers. So, a fraudster has your personal information. What is that fraudster going to do now? Well, they need to convert it to a financial gain. So, most likely, they will be buying large ticket items such as computers, cars, or televisions. They might take out a loan. They could set up a phone service in your name, which I didn't understand at first, but they would do this in order to impersonate you, basically, to trick your financial institutions or anybody else they're interested in tricking. They could use counterfeit checks or open up bank accounts and drain your bank account quickly. This one I also didn't understand until I read further into it in the book, was reporting your victim's name to the police instead of their own. This can help them get out of crimes, but additionally, we also could see them buying guns if they're on a do not buy list under your name, which is incredibly scary given today's climate. They could also change their victim's mailing address, which would help them get any of the money that they're setting up or counterfeit checks or bank accounts delivered to them, and then you might not even know what is going on. Next, let's go over some common ways in which a victim's identity can be stolen. First, somebody could be posing as a legitimate employee, government official, or even a representative of the organization in which the victim works at in order to steal a victim's identity. Next is shoulder surfing. This is when somebody could be watching and taking sensitive information from your computer or phone, such as a credit card number or valuable work information. Next is dumpster diving. This is why many companies have professional companies shred their information. You never know who could be on the receiving end of your trash and take sensitive information such as account numbers or credit card numbers or social security numbers even. It is very important to be wary of what you are throwing out and knowing who is going to be seeing the stuff in your trash can. Next, we have card skimming. This is especially prevalent at gas stations. As you can see on the left, that is where a card skimmer is and that somebody on the right has removed. This can be taking your personal card number and your chip and then relaying that information back to fraudsters so that they can use your card. When an identity theft is caught, they can face criminal charges, civil actions, or even both. If you are the victim of identity theft, then what should you do? First, you need to contact your financial institution and make sure you put a stop to any other transactions that could hit your account, and talk to them about any transactions that may have hit to confirm that they are or are not you. Next, you'll need to get new cards. It would probably be best too if you changed your personal identifiers, such as your PIN number, your passwords to your online banking, and even your security questions. Next, you could file a complaint with the FTC. All of these are steps, and I'm sure your bank will lead you through other steps as well if you do become the victim of identity theft. Last year, when my account number and PIN number was stolen, my bank was able to immediately tell that it wasn't me making a purchase and called me within 20 minutes to confirm that. They rectified the situation within an hour. So even though increased technology has increased consumer fraud, banks are working hard to rectify that situation by upping their game and being able to tell when you're not actually making that purchase. Lastly, let's go over a few more ways in which consumers can face fraud in today's world. Another type of consumer scam that we're going to go over is the foreign advance fee scam. I listed some examples. Most notably is the Nigerian money offer scam and disbursement of money from wills. Many of these seem like very real opportunities, so it's very essential to be alert when you're presented with these to be able to decipher a legitimate opportunity from a not legitimate opportunity. Next, we have the work at home schemes. These multi-level marketing organizations are similar to pyramid or Ponzi schemes. They are often associated with chain letters, mail stuffing, product testing, and craft testing. My friend who went to UCF for undergrad told me about a story of how the athletes on campus were a part of a strange pyramid scheme involving an energy drink. They would approach students and entice them to listen to their presentations by offering them tours of their sports facilities. It quickly became clear that it was a poorly planned Ponzi scheme, as they were promised sports cars in exchange for selling cases of this electric drink. After he told me the story, we looked them up online, and they just got a huge fine from the FTC. So clearly it wasn't a legitimate business. So you always need to look out for that when you're looking at some of these different online retail opportunities. When it comes to mystery shopping, some of these opportunities might actually be legitimate. But unfortunately, most of them will be, as the book says, bogus. So it is important to differentiate which ones are and which ones aren't legitimate. An illegitimate one very well might ask for an application fee, so be on the lookout for something like that. As for telemarketing fraud, that is something everybody is pretty familiar with. Telemarketers often prey on the elderly. While it is easy to tell a fake call when it is a loud, automated voice yelling that the IRS owes you money, increased technology and availability of information sometimes mean that these telemarketers know personal information about you, which might trick you into believing it's real. Many of these callers will ask for a wire transfer. This is a huge red flag, and you should hang up immediately. Investment scams are frauds that are related to stocks, bonds, commodities, real estate, and other types of investments. These may be harder to determine if they are real or fake. One should always be alert when considering a new investment opportunity and ensure if it's from a licensed professional. In conclusion, unfortunately, fraud is everywhere we turn, and it is up to us to protect and safeguard our assets. Some ways we can do this is to first protect our physical assets, such as our home, our computer, our cars, our mail, our wallets, and our valuables. We also want to make sure we are safeguarding our personal information, such as our original documentations of our social security numbers and our birth certificates. We also want to make sure we're using strong passwords for everything. That includes numbers, symbols, capital letters, and changing it every few months. While it seems that consumer fraud is prevalent in many areas of our lives, it's up to us now to inform our friends, our families, and our loved ones on how we can better protect ourselves from being victims of consumer fraud. I hope everyone learned a little bit in this lesson and can apply some of these lessons going forward in their lives. And I hope none of us are victims of large identity theft or consumer fraud ever.